So, are you DTFF?
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday if you're joining us live, and thank you so much if you are. We truly appreciate it. We are back. Another fantastic episode this week. We are going to do a little bit of a recap here. We're starting our recap series, kind of talking about some of the things that happened last season, position by position. This week, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. Excuse me.
They got you all verklempt. You're so excited to talk about these quarterbacks, you can't even begin to talk about them.
Or maybe it's kind of gross, so I don't want to talk about it and I'm choking. I don't know. We'll see. There's probably a little both. There's going to be some both in there, let's be honest. Before we get into it, though, Jake, my most favorite co-host, how are you this week?
Man, I feel like I'm at the crest because the season, the true football season, is nigh. The end of it is nigh. We are 2 games away from having a champion, and I don't know how to feel about it. I was, as I'm sure you were, a little bummed this past weekend to see our beloved Jacksonville Jaguars, which we now stand, get the stanky boot from the playoffs. But they put up a good fight, and so I feel good about that. They
sure did.
We're certainly going to talk about at least one of those guys a little bit later on. But, I am excited to see how things shake out for the Super Bowl. Do you have a pick out of these 4 remaining teams? Do you have a favorite out of Kansas City, Philadelphia, those other teams? Those are my 2 picks, by the way, to make it to the Super Bowl.
Cincinnati and San Francisco.
There you go. Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
If I had to pick one, I think I would lean Cincinnati. Otherwise, Philadelphia would be a very close second. Those are the 2 I hope make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I had to root for one, it's probably the AFC team this year. Nothing against the Eagles, nothing against any of those teams. Like, they're all great teams. Although it would be kind of cool to root for San Francisco with Mr. Irrelevant winning a Super Bowl.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be kind of nice.
Could shove that in Tom Brady's face forever. Yeah, you're good, but did you win a Super Bowl your rookie season?
Yeah, you were a 6th round pick, but you weren't Mr. Irrelevant.
God, seems so lame by comparison. No, and that would be a great story. And they are a team that could do it.
Yeah, and CMC, like, he says such a good career. It'd be nice to see him get a championship as well.
Yeah.
Because, on the Panthers, that was never going to fucking happen. So the fact that he actually has that opportunity now is pretty cool. I think that'd be nice for him. But ultimately, yeah, I think the Bengals, there's something about them. Joe Burrow, Chase, Higgins.
Team of destiny kind of thing. That's the vibes you're getting.
Yeah.
Fair. We'll see. But I'm excited. I'm excited for this last. And we got to savor these last couple of weekends. 3 if you count the Pro Bowl, which I don't.
I don't count it, but I actually might tune in this year, only because they're changing everything up, and you've got Pete Davidson and Snoop Dogg as the captains for the Pro Bowl teams, which I think is pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I was saying this to my wife this weekend when I saw that. I'm like, Pete Davidson, really? I don't get the appeal of him. And I was kind of going off on a tangent here, but it's like I don't get the appeal of him. I don't understand it.
What is it that you don't get? Just everything? Just the whole Pete Davidson vibe that you don't gel with?
I don't know what I'm doing.
First of all, he'll do no shortage of that for the Pro Bowl, I hope. Also, do you think we could get the Pro Bowl at some point to be like that old MTV show Rock and Jock? Remember that? Where they'd be like musical artists and athletes together on a basketball team on like 5-on-5. And it was amazing. Maybe they could do something like that.
You should float that out to the NFL and see what they have to say, because that would be pretty rad.
Roger, take that. I'll send a note about it.
I mean, think about it. If you were to get like some of the Jonas Brothers out there and shit. Like you get a whole different demographic of watchers just to
Exactly
watch the
right.
Pro Bowl at least. And then maybe they'd be like, oh, that football player's cute. Maybe I'll watch football. I know I'm generalizing and I shouldn't do that, but it's a very superficial thing. But
especially
the
because
fact
only
remains.
two of the Jonases are cute. I think that was the greatest generalization that you just made there. But I
How
do
dare
think
you. How
there's
dare
ways to
you.
spruce it up. There's ways to spruce up that weekend. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk about that any further, for the love of
Not
God.
quite yet.
We can get into the rest of this episode.
I guess if we so choose. So, Jake, you provided our beer for us this evening. Would you like to tell us and the listeners all about it?
I would, as I unzip my little my beer cozy here, just to make sure I get
where
this
you went with
exactly
that.
right. Oh, glad I finished that unzip. No, this is a Southern Tier beer. I love Southern Tier brewing, but they do tend to be on the sweeter side. That's why typically these are one and done beers for me. I'm assuming this will be the same. It's an Irish cream stout. Never seen this before. Never quite seen a beer like this before. I'm imagining it's like a Bailey's cream meets beer situation. Dustin, have you taken a sip yet? What do you think?
I haven't.
You've just been nosing it.
It's got an interesting aroma to it.
I smell the Baileys.
Yeah,
that's what I smell.
It almost, and maybe it's a mental thing because when I look at the bottle here, put it up to the camera for folks to see. It's green and it's got the 4-leaf clover. Yeah. So I immediately thought like mint or like cream to mint.
Oh, right.
So when I sniffed it,
fuck.
Yeah. So when I sniffed it, I think just got that whiff, even though it's not in there at all.
You had a Pavlovian response to the Shamrock on there. But it's not shaky. It's not McDonald's Shamrock shaky. But I think it is exactly like Bailey's in a stout. It's kind of like one of those drop shots that you would do in that fashion. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I don't hate it.
It's a very thin body. Very thin body. For a stout, there's not a lot of
body that way.
There's not a lot to it, body wise.
Yeah, you like a thick stout. You like a thick body on your stouts. That's what I know about you. If there's one thing I know about you,
there's a little bit of hop bitterness to it, but not a lot. It's the hops really aren't there a whole lot.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of like a cream soda, more than like a Bailey's. It's like a stout with like cream soda in it. That's what it tastes like to me.
I think that's a better description. I think that I would have bought 8 packs of this if that had been the description on the bottle. So maybe they should change that. I like it. We'll see how it fares towards the end of this episode as it starts to get sweeter and sweeter. Dustin, I'm sure that you like this beer maybe a little bit more than the beer payout that we have to do from last week's bet. Just maybe.
I think I'd rather take the payout.
Really?
Who doesn't like Fireball?
God damn it. That's right.
Not a sponsor, but please be a sponsor.
Hashtag maybe almost a sponsor. We'll see. But do you want to recap last week?
Sure. So the bet last week was, and this is a bet that I threw out there, wide receiver room versus wide receiver room, KC versus Jacksonville. And Jake, you took Jacksonville, much to my dismay. And I was very explicit on the episode last week. Just wide receivers, no tight ends.
Correct.
Because that would have changed just dramatically. Just for the record.
Oh, yes, it would.
So Kansas City had 26 points for all their wide receivers. Yeah, okay. Nothing great, but not terrible. Well, lo and behold, Jacksonville 37.1 in a row. It's just incredible.
Not bad.
So I got my ass handed to me in this beer bet. So Jake, as I grab my Fireball, you're an amazing fantasy football prognosticator / genius.
That's so kind of you to say.
Cheers.
Completely unscripted and unprompted. I really appreciate that. As you're doing your traditional shot of Fireball, I do want to point out Travis Kelce had more points to himself than all of the Kansas City receivers combined. And I think all of the Jaguars receivers combined, at least very close. He just dominated. So I'm glad I avoided those receivers based on that, because he's always, as we've long said, on this
Yes.
show, especially this year, is one of the greatest fantasy assets ever. You'd be a fool not to believe that.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So, Jake, do you have a DFS update for us?
I sure do, and it's a sad DFS update. So last week, we went ahead as we do on this thing, and we put a $5 into Underdog. And here's who we bet on. Here's who we put the props for. We went heavy on the Jaguars, as we're inclined to do. We had Trevor Lawrence higher than 245.5 passing yards. He only hit 217. So his receivers did a lot, but he did not do a lot passing. Travis Etienne, we were wavering on this one a little bit. Over 13.5 receiving yards. We hit the high. It was 18 receiving yards on that. So that was nice. Zay Jones hit his, crushed his. We had him over 51.5 receiving yards. He had 83. That was wonderful to see. Patrick Mahomes hobbled, came off in, was it late in the second quarter, I believe, for a series. I think that's what caused this. We took the over on 307.5 passing yards, only had 195. He was a different guy after the injury. So that's what I blame that on. Devonta Smith, this one's harder. Devonta Smith, 63.5 yards. We took the higher on receiving, had 61. Not get there. Wouldn't have mattered, of course, but it still stings.
I know. That one really does sting. Oh, I hate it when it's that close. I'd rather he would have had like 10 yards receiving than 61. at least I lost by a lot. Like this, it's like you couldn't have had 2 more yards. You could have got 2 more yards somewhere in there. Like, come on.
2 more yards would have made it even worse. If he had been 63 and the prop was 63.5.
The point remains he could have eked that out somewhere for us. I guess
he didn't do it for us. That's okay. Still believe.
I guess
we'll see if we believe in him maybe later on in the episode when it comes back around to this.
That's right. All right. So, Jake, you said we have a fresh new drunk trade of the week. So, should we get into it?
Let's do it.
Drunk, hammered, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
Dustin, I got to say, I'm thrilled to talk about this one, mostly because of all of this context. This is unlike any trade format that we've dealt with in the past. So this one comes from @BearSuitJoel on Twitter. This is a 12-team PPR dynasty league. There are yardage premiums involved. He didn't specify exactly what those premiums were, but you get the general sense of what that means. It's also a salary cap league.
Nice.
Not only is it a salary cap league, it is an IDP league.
Ooh.
Not only is it a salary cap IDP league, it is a head coach league. You have to choose a head coach as well. I didn't ask too many questions to BearSuitJoel, but if I could ask unlimited questions, I would say, what in the fuck do you do with a head coach? How does that even work into the scoring? I don't know.
I've heard of it before, and like some of the other podcasts I listen to, it'll like get brought up like just briefly, and I've always wondered what that is.
I want to know.
I want to know too,
but I don't know enough, or I don't want to know enough to Google. Apparently, that's my line with this. I want to know, but not enough to punch that into the old Google machine. But anyways, with all that formatting, here's the deal: you start one quarterback, one running back. That's important. Only one running back, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex. It's a little bit condensed on the offensive side, I'm guessing because of the IDP and all that involved. But the offer is this. They sent away an offer to get Travis Etienne. They would be giving up DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley. They say, I'm weak at running back. The only other running backs that they have are Dameon Pierce and Rachaad White, stacked everywhere else. And Etienne is $1 against the $90 cap. So every player would have a certain cap designation, like real contracts work in the NFL. This is about as close to a real NFL type of fantasy league I think you're going to find, which is pretty neat. But there's a lot involved here. By the way, there were 4 IPAs deep when they made this offer. Got to get that in there. 4 IPAs
Nice.
deep. Mr. Scampers also wants to know in the chat, by the way, what's the backstory of the name Bear Suit Joel? I don't know, Scampers. Add that onto the list of questions that I want to ask this person. No, Dustin, we've said a lot. I've said a lot, too much, arguably. What do you think about the league in general? Let's not even talk about the trade just yet. What about this league in general? Are you interested in something like this?
I am. And so I was doing a little Googling while you were talking here. So this one article I found, I'm sure there's many different ways to do this. It says currently proposed scoring breakdown would be +2 for win, -2 for loss, -1 for tie, and then +1, -1 for each 5 points of margin of victory or loss.
Ooh.
So basically, you're just getting additional points based on the head coach you choose that week.
Sure. Oh, and that's for that version. Maybe it's per week, or
Right.
maybe in this version with Dynasty, you got to, again, draft a coach to stick with them, which could get very interesting, very fast, because turnover is quite something. I'm really interested in something like this. It would be intimidating as all hell. I need
Absolutely.
to take one of these things on individually first. I did
And
an
not the
IDP
IDP.
league once upon a time. I probably won't do one again. I would be interested in the salary cap aspect of this greatly.
Mhm.
But anyways, with all that said, Travis Etienne, who we love on this podcast, obviously, versus DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley. I don't know what the cap is for DK and Calvin to that extent, but it seems largely more than Etienne. It seems like a big deal that Etienne is only $1. All of
Well,
this
it's because he's on his rookie contract. So one thing I do know about contract leagues or salary cap leagues is that rookies that are or players that are on their rookie contract have very low salaries, as like the NFL. And then once they're off their rookie contract, they get signed or extended, then their cap hit goes up accordingly based on whatever their actual contract is. So this is all based on like real contracts.
You're so wise.
Yeah. I do know that much at least.
So Calvin Ridley poses an interesting thing then at that, with his now signing with Jacksonville. That throws maybe an interesting wrinkle into this. But I mean, Travis Etienne, if we strip away everything else, Travis Etienne for DK Metcalf and Calvin Ridley, it seems like I would lean still on the Metcalf Ridley side of things, typically in a typical dynasty league. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. But seeing how this is a salary cap league, you're gaining all that salary cap that you can use on incoming rookies in your rookie draft or free agents out on the waiver wire or other trades you can make. All that goes into account there. So, and especially since he says he's stacked everywhere else. I mean, if he's giving up DK and Calvin Ridley and he still says he's stacked, like he's got to have some good wide receivers there yet. So
yeah, let me give you his list of other receivers, just so you know. Right. He gave me some context. It was a little bit too much to fit into the slide here.
No, I love that.
Would still have Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Hollywood Brown, Chris Olave, and Rashad Bateman at least. So yeah.
Smash. Oh yeah, I would smash that. Yeah. Getting all that cap space back. And again, I shouldn't say again, but you need that cap space because if your existing players get contract extensions or they, whatever, that's going to affect your roster makeup and you may have to end up cutting them or trading them to be able to be under your salary cap. So having that extra space while still having all those studs, yeah, go for it.
And you figure $1 a piece, I guess, for Damian Pierce and Rashad White as well in this format.
Yeah.
But you're super cheap at running back, the way it ought to be for an NFL team, right? You just go as cheap as possible, as young as possible, and hope for the best, and then go into the pool with wide receivers. This must be what real GMs feel like in a league like this. I wonder how many trades get done in the real NFL after 4 IPAs, Dustin. I don't know.
Probably not nearly enough.
There should be more. That's what
there should be
for. I love this trade. I love everything about it. Very unique. So thank you very much, Bear Suit Joel, for participating in that.
Yeah. And a good evening to you, Scampers. Thank you for joining us. As always, we love having you in the chat with us.
Yes. And Scampers, if you have ideas of what Bear Suit Joel means to yourself, share that in the chat as well. That would be fun.
I mean, I think the obvious is his name is Joel, and he wore a bear suit once.
Just once? One
Or
time
may-
is enough to get you that?
Oh, depending on how the evening goes or the day. I shouldn't say it's just an evening, but it could be a day.
Contextual.
I mean, or the time period. Like it. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
That's fair.
you know how nicknames work. Like all it takes is one time, and it's stuck with you forever. So
That is too true. Too true. All right. Do we move on to the main event here, Dustin?
yeah, let's get into it. So yeah, we're talking quarterbacks this week. I'm going to go through 1 through 12 real quick here. Just fire them off based on total points for the season. And then after I go through that, we can kind of start picking and choosing, who we want to discuss, where things, maybe some players for next redraft season, where we think they're going to land. We could do a little dynasty talk in there too, dynasty values,
Heavy dynasty
etc.
talk for these ones. This is the most interesting position, I think, personally
So,
for
yeah.
me in dynasty right now.
So yeah, we're going to be kind of far and wide here with our topics of discussion and where we go. So top 12 based on total points. We got Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Geno Smith,
Love it.
Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, and Justin Herbert, and then Tom Brady at number 12.
Tom just could not let us have one season with him outside the top 12. He couldn't do us that solid. What a dick.
So, Jake, let me throw you a question. What are some of the big surprises in this top 12 for total points?
In total points, I think the standouts are obvious here of what we did not expect to happen coming into this season. Geno Smith, we talked about him a few episodes ago. Just what a lovely gift he was to you early on waivers if you picked him up, which I did. It did not help me as much as it should because the rest of my team was trash, but Geno did his part, and that's what matters. I think Kirk Cousins is interesting to talk about here at QB7. Kirk Cousins still did not get his due coming into the season. I think he was still extremely underrated as a guy who's not going to lose you weeks. And that's really what he did, but he just did it a bit more extravagantly this week or this season, I should say.
Yeah. And just that add on there, Jake, real quick, he was 11th overall in points per game. So, I mean, he was easily top 12, any way you try to look at it.
Yeah, don't try to brush him off because he just played all the games. People like to do that, which I understand to some extent. But Kirk Cousins definitely did, for fantasy, deserve his spot here. But Daniel Jones is a huge one. We've talked about Jared Goff a little bit, actually quite a lot. I don't know if we need to dive into Jared Goff too much more. Daniel Jones, though, is the guy that I think, myself included, everybody just went, well, if he's sitting there in the last rounds of the draft, he'll be a guy I'll stack with another quarterback and just see what shakes out. And that's as much confidence as I gave into him. But here's what I want to talk about with Daniel Jones. That's very important. We talk about rushing upside all the time here. It's the Konami code factor. But I just want to distill this into one little metric from this season. The QB rushing leaders. So anybody who got more than 40 rushing yards per game, here's that list. Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Daniel Jones. All 5 of those guys finished inside the top 10 in points per game. Lamar Jackson obviously did not play very much, unfortunately. But Daniel Jones has, I hate saying this, I hate it, sneaky rushing upside. Because
as we said last week, he's a scooter. He knows how to scoot.
He's a scooter, and everybody remembers that play where he ran really far and tripped before he got into the end zone. And I swear to God, that's what is discounting him from getting the same Konami code sort of love that these other guys get.
It's interesting, Jake, because this is one player I wanted us to have a conversation with. When I was looking at the list, I'm like, Daniel Jones, what are we feeling about him after this season? Because he definitely took a step forward this year, I feel like. Sounds like he's going to remain with the Giants. I know he's free agent after this year. He's one of their free agents. Sounds like they want to keep him on board, which is awesome. Like they should. Like he's a very serviceable quarterback. The fact that he was 9th overall in total points and points per game, like he was top 10 in both. So it's not like, oh yeah, he had some big blow up games and, you know, kind of like Kirk Cousins, you know, basically. And the fact that he did all of this year with the Sisters of the Poor wide receiver core, like, I mean, Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard that was injured for half the season, Richie James, whoever
His
that
target
is.
leader was
I mean,
Saquon Barkley, which makes a lot of sense.
I mean, he did this all with essentially no alpha wide receivers on the team.
Yeah, no.
And
stars.
I think that the Giants are going to go out and either try to trade for one or sign one of the big name free agent wide receivers this year to really help bolster that wide receiver core. So they have that one alpha. So
yeah,
I want to play a game. So if they do that, say they sign, I don't even know who's a free agent.
Well, that's what I want to talk about in a little bit, but let's get through this game first because I don't know about the free agents.
So just say, assuming they sign one, or maybe they draft one of the very highly coveted wide receivers in this draft class.
Okay, the top tier. Okay.
Yeah. What does that do for Daniel Jones for you for next season going into redraft?
For
knowing that he finished inside the top 10.
Yeah.
And say they bring in this alpha wide receiver and it's going to be a second year in the McAdoo offense.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to be drafting? Is he going to be someone you're identifying maybe in like if you're waiting a little bit on quarterback, not getting one of those elite top, 5 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Is he someone you're going to identify possibly in like the 8th or 9th round, get him a little bit early, but just knowing that he finished inside the top 10 this last year?
It's not that he finished inside the top 10. That's not what's going to do it for me. What's doing it for me with Daniel Jones is the Konami code aspect of him, the underrated Konami code aspect.
Scoot.
And what you said, it doesn't matter to me necessarily who they bring in at wide receiver. And I don't know that they're going to have a ton of options. Maybe they could trade for somebody. Maybe one of these guys who's on the outs, maybe Brandon Cooks, who wants out of Texas so bad. Or maybe he wants Elijah Moore, who's disgruntled over with the Jets. Maybe they could get somebody like that. Because the free agent pool, I will note, is topped by Juju Smith-Schuster. And then pretty much Sterling Shepard is the next on that list. So that makes it difficult for the wide receiver part. I would still be interested in him, supposing that his ADP is outside of the top 12 guys.
Which I'm assuming it's going to be.
Easy click off for me because he is going to get the rushing upside. He has not had a season like this before. And I understand that. Like 700 yards for him is a lot. And maybe some of that has to do with the fact that he didn't have a ton of receivers to throw to, and he felt like he had to take it on himself to do it more. Or maybe it's just the system, and they're letting him do what he's good at because he is good at it.
Exactly.
So I'm into it. I think Saquon coming back or not coming back actually does play a decent sized role in this decision, though. And he seems like he's willing to take a pay cut for what it's worth. Saquon, he's come out and said, like, I'm not going to reset the market.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up coming back. I think anyone is, I mean, they weren't expected to make the playoffs this year. Like the fact that they made the playoffs, I think, some players are different, but if players can see they've got a good thing going, like, the Giants finally got, good GM, good coach. They took a huge step in the right direction this year, and they're trending in the right direction. Like if you have that opportunity to really like be on a good team that you can win a Super Bowl and kind of cement your legacy with a Super Bowl victory. Yeah. Why not? I mean, and
he ain't going to get tons of money elsewhere.
Yeah, the
knows
running,
that.
especially the running back market, like that's just.
And an off injured one, like he's very aware of
Mhm.
his circumstances. So I do
Mhm.
think that Daniel Jones is definitely an intriguing redraft guy as we get closer. I think now is the time to get him in Dynasty before they potentially add assets. I hope
Mhm.
that they get him a decent tight end. And I hope that they use that tight end better than they did Evan Ingram when he was still with the team. Maybe Mike Gesicki finds his way over here from the Dolphins. And maybe that would actually be good for Daniel Jones. I'm still not into Gesicki for fantasy, of course. But that could really
That
help
would bum
Daniel.
me out too because I really like Bellinger. Coming off his rookie season, like
Sure.
he had a very solid rookie year. I know he had that injury in there that kind of derailed things for a while, but I mean, I do like his upside. So I would hope they wouldn't bring in someone to
Hey, they
compete
could
with him.
both do good things, especially if there's no receivers to throw to.
Well,
you know?
okay, that's
It'd just
fair.
be all
Yeah,
tight ends all the time.
sign Gasecki as a wide receiver, and then it'll be fine.
I do love that. We should just briefly with Jared Goff, just call attention to it. What's
Mhm.
your maximum price that you're giving away for him in Dynasty right now? I think you are potentially lower on him in Dynasty than I am. I think we talked about that. But like, what's your maximum offer for him?
A first plus.
Like
He's
how
worth
much
more.
extra?
He's worth more than just a first, because I do think he's going to end up being the starter at least in Detroit for at least the next couple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to draft anyone high profile. They've got other holes they need to fill, and he did really well this year. So I don't think they're going to go with someone else. So, but he's not worth two firsts in my opinion. First, I mean,
Agreed.
especially in like a super flex league. Maybe a first and someone like I'm trying
James
to think
Conner.
about.
Throw a running back onto the mix
Sure.
that has
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
decent value, but is
Like a
degraded.
second round value, basically, like a first and a second, basically, is I think what I would pay.
Fair. I like that. Obviously, Tom Brady, if this fucking guy comes back next year, if he does it, and he's probably going to do it just because, would you still remain interested for a redraft? Would he still be on your damn radar for a redraft at this point? At 46 years old.
For me, I probably shouldn't bet against them, but probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I know I wrote him off like 8 seasons ago already, but
Yeah.
I don't know
Daniel
that he's
Jones
gonna-
versus Tom Brady on the clock. They're both there at wherever you want to draft a QB. Who would you take
Ugh.
for 1 year?
Um,
We just talked about Daniel Jones
I know.
in a positive light. Don't give him the
I know.
ugh.
I know. I would take Daniel Jones.
Okay. All right. That's
got
what
more
I wanted.
He's got more scoot to him.
He's got a lot more scoot to him than Father Tom Brady does right now. Did we want to touch on Geno any more beyond just an amazing story? Because, like, holy hell.
I mean,
so damn.
okay. Where would you feel comfortable drafting him next year or redraft?
Next year with Geno Smith, just because there were games where it felt like he was starting to taper off finally. And I don't know if this was a 1-year wonder resurgence or not. I would say that he'll still be firmly outside of my top 10. I probably won't draft him inside the top 12 still, but I might take that back as we get closer. Like when we get really firmed up coming into redraft season and we know a lot more information, I'll take him over Tom Brady. I'll tell you that right now. And I don't know if I can take him. God damn it. Maybe I'll take him over Daniel Jones too. I don't know, Dustin. Geno is a hard one to peg down.
All right, so here let's play the game here. I'm gonna start naming off quarterbacks,
Okay.
and you tell me when you would take him over these quarterbacks.
Done.
All right, Derek Carr,
Yes.
Russell Wilson,
Yep.
Tua,
Ooh. I don't know, man. Tua, we can
I know
talk
it's a tough
about
one.
him in a little bit. He was the quarterback 10 in points per game. We saw what he did his very first year. with all of these pieces together. It just depends. Tua is very hard as a case study because I don't know what his future looks like. If everything is clear, if he's good to go, there's no medical concerns, and he just is going to be out there, which is a lot to presume, then I would take Tua above Geno.
All right. How about Aaron?
Oh, Geno all day.
All right. Brady, we already talked about.
Yep.
Herbert, I'm going to assume you're going to take over Geno.
We can talk about Herbert a little bit as a
Okay.
transition out of this here, but Herbert is going to be undervalued extremely next year.
All right. Goff.
That's an interesting line. I think that is the exact line of like, and they'll probably be close to each other in ADP, I presume.
Mhm.
So I think you'll
Yeah.
have your pick between those two, and I think it's going to be a tough decision on the clock. I think right now, I would lean with Jared Goff,
Okay.
but it'll be close.
All right. Fair enough. Okay. So we had our top 12, and then we can get into like individual players here briefly. So outside of the top 12 here, I'm gonna list off the next 12 for you, Jake. Out of these 12, the next top 12,
Yep.
do you think that there's any of these that are going to crack into the top 12 next year?
Are we talking ADP or like overall finish?
Just overall finish.
Okay.
All right. Just to kind of keep
Right.
things simple.
Yeah.
All right. So at number 13, we had Rodgers. So I'll just list them off here. So we have Rodgers, Lamar, Tua, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Kyler, Marcus Mariota, Davis Mills, Andy Dalton, Mac Jones, and Jacoby Brissett. Now,
What a disparate group. The
Now-
names that you put in next to each other is outrageous.
But this was by total points. So we obviously know Kyler, Dak, Tua, Lamar all had injuries this year.
Yep.
I would expect them to be in the top 12 next year.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
For
We're on
sure.
the same page there. Outside of those 4 quarterbacks,
Mhm.
was there any of these other ones I listed off that you think can crack the top 12 next year? I guess the big one is Russell Wilson.
Yeah, thank you.
Are,
That- I was gonna
are we
say.
going to see what we saw the last couple games of the season after Hackett got fired and the offense kind of picked up a little bit? Do we see that Russell Wilson next year? Or do we see more of the same as what we saw this last year?
I don't mean this to sound callous. I truly don't. And I know that you're going to think I'm a liar for saying that because it's Russell and I love nothing more than to be an asshole to Russell Wilson. I do not mean this to be callous. I didn't see anything in the last couple of games where I was still like, yeah, going forward, he's a locked in guy. It was great. He had a couple of good ends of finishes, but he was going against the Chargers in week 18 when there was the playoff implications were just not there for them. Like it was pretty much decided in that week. I want to say that I called attention to that in that week.
I believe so.
But it was like, yeah, okay, a glimmer of that at the end is understandable, especially after a team loses their head coach. There's always that week after. It seems like every time it happens where they're
There's
just
the
like,
bump.
let's go get one for the Gipper. Whoever
Yep.
the new Gipper is. They don't even know
Yep.
who that is, but there's always that one bump up. So I'm not putting too much stock into that. He didn't like light my socks on fire. It's just who do they truly enlist? What help does he get in the offseason? I think the question is, if they stay exactly as they are with their receiving core, and they'll probably do a Broncos thing and add another couple of running backs into the mix, all middling running backs as they wait for Javonte Williams to get cleared for full health. Is that enough? I don't know. I don't know that that's enough. We'll see what new system is brought in, but he could be a value. For dynasty purposes, I'll trade for him now and hope that they figure out a way to, from inside the ship, rebuild that thing.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah, he is a really tricky one, and I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, just he's definitely going to be outside the top 12 in ADP next year for sure. I would be shocked if he's inside the top 12 ADP. Even though I know he has that name recognition,
Mhm.
I just don't see that. Now in your individual home league, yeah, there's probably going to be some of your league mates that will draft him earlier just based off the name recognition and what he's done historically. But if you're in a more sophisticated, degenerate league like we typically are in,
Unsophisticated.
he's not going to go in the top 12.
Here's where I run into a lot of issues with this 11 to 15 to 18 range of quarterbacks. Who is so good right now that we're saying you're definitively going to stay within that top 12 or you're going to move up? There's so many. I mean, we were talking about the Geno Smith game with him and Daniel Jones and all those guys, Jared Goff. Who is there anybody? We don't know what's happening with Derek Carr right now. We don't know who the San Francisco quarterback is. We don't know who the Washington quarterback, Sean Watson, I'm out on in that respect. Aaron Rodgers, I'm out on, even if he does come back. There's so many questions that it doesn't seem crazy to me that Russell finds his way back in there. I think what I'm curious about, if you could send Jared Goff in your Dynasty Superflex League for Russell Wilson straight up, would you do that? Because I think that's a very real, no, you wouldn't do that.
No, I would keep Goff.
If you could get additional resources on top of that, if you could trade Goff and get Russell in a second round pick, would you even consider it then?
If we're, what kind of format are we talking here? Sorry, I got to get a little bit.
Superflex. It's
Superflex.
just Superflex.
Yeah. I think then I might, because Goff is still I'm assuming is going to be your number 2 quarterback. So you're essentially swapping number 2 quarterbacks. And I do think Russell will improve next year under a better system and a better head coach. Will he be top 10, top 5 like we'd seen for years? No, I don't expect that. But I do expect him to improve. So if I could get Russell Wilson as my number 2 plus a little something on top of it for Jared Goff, yeah, I think I would do that.
He feels very much high risk, high reward right now. Because if he just gets it back together, we've seen what he can be as a fantasy asset, if nothing else. And it's very good. It's very consistently good. But I do wonder if like the big upside of Russell is still there. And I don't know if it is.
Yeah, that I don't know.
1 or 2 years maybe figuring this way as the sure Lion starter. Like that almost still might be worth it as opposed to Russell Wilson in a second round pick.
It could be, especially if you expect their offense to take another step forward this next year. You get Jameson Williams, who's going to be back fully healthy. We saw him flash at the end of the season. You've still got all the weapons there. Who knows what they add in the offseason this year, either via draft or free agencies. So yeah, I mean, Goff may be the better option moving forward in the short term. It wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think both of those guys could be argued as a trade low candidate in dynasty formats right now. Here's one guy that I would just love to talk to that doesn't really fit into any of our rhythms that we're talking about right now. He is supposedly going to come back. His coach just announced that he is finally, he's going to come back. He took some time to consider he's going to come back next year. I'm talking about Matthew Stafford for the Rams. So his injuries, he's getting up there in age. Everybody on that team is at the precipice. Like McVay was almost going to step away, supposedly. But again, he pulled back. He's going to be there. Cooper Kupp, he's getting up there. Allen Robinson, obviously, like that whole crew.
That's a dead man walking right there.
There's no youth on that team outside of, I guess, Cam Akers, you could say.
How dare you say that sort of thing with Tutu Atwell on that team and Van Jefferson?
You're right. Lest we even talk about Ben Skoranek more. But I do think it's very interesting if the whole gang gets back together for one more genuine attempt at it. It seems like that's where they're heading towards. Do you put faith back in Matt Stafford? Could he maybe be the guy who gets close enough to the top 12 again for next year?
I think he could be, especially if I was going to punt the quarterback position super hard,
Mhm.
wait until like the 14th round, just wait till the
Yeah.
end because you're not going to have to draft him before then. Let's be honest. Like, even with his name and the team and everything else, like, you're not going to have to draft him early whatsoever. So if I was punting super hard and going for, like, I'm going to draft a couple of quarterbacks I think have that upside that could flirt with the top 12 or will definitely have QB1 weeks in
Mhm.
there, I think Stafford would be a good candidate for that. Cooper
There's
Cup,
kind of a world where Daniel Jones and Matt Stafford, you draft both of them. If you're into that, I understand some people just don't want to do that. Like in our league, we would absolutely do that because you have to have two quarterbacks. There's a world where that combination
Mhm,
could win you the league next year if
absolutely.
only if things right. Not even a lot of things have to go right.
Hmm. Yeah, the only thing that I'm a little hesitant with is, Cooper Cup coming off that injury. Is he going to come back like 100% to start the season? If that's the case, then yes. As we're going through the offseason here and all reports out of camp and in his personal videos on Instagram or whatever, like he's going full speed. There's zero restrictions. Like, yeah, give me Matthew Stafford at cost. I think he could return good value.
I like that. I think that's also a good way to address this question. Like, what is your strategy? We talked about it. It feels like it's a very condensed group at the top.
Hmm.
It's your Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, still Justin Fields, as we talked about. Kyler Murray, I would assume, is still in that tier for most people. Same with Lamar Jackson. And
Hmm.
maybe Trevor Lawrence is now a part of that tier. Justin Herbert on the fringe for some people. I would still include him there.
Hmm.
After that, it's a black hole. It's the Milky Way. Nobody knows why you don't think what to make of this next group.
So you've got 9 quarterbacks basically you would be comfortable taking relatively early in a draft. Like if you were going QB early,
Yeah.
so
I'm
so you have
talking,
so you have about 9 you'd feel comfortable with.
I would say, and of course there's some decreasing
Well,
levels
yeah,
to
I'm
that.
not
They
saying
might
you'd
not all
take
be in their one tier.
yeah, I'm
But
not
yeah,
saying you'd take
yeah,
Lamar in the first round or,
right.
like I'm not saying that, but as far as like being super confident, like, okay, these quarterbacks, it's a set it and forget it basically every single week.
Yep.
You
Yeah, and I
have
think that
9 that
that
you're
is the
comfortable with.
group. And I think that
Okay.
it's not necessarily conspicuous that that same group is the ones that are the ones I would target for consistency in dynasty leagues right
Mhm.
now. And some of these guys down this list that have flashed this season, if you can get somebody to draw into that aspect of it, again, even with Daniel Jones, as much as I do love and appreciate that upside, if you can get some way to put him in a trade to get you a guy like Kyler Murray, who has been maybe forgotten about a little bit right now because of the
Mhm.
injury. Like I still
Well, and it's
maintain
gonna
that
be
his
super
fantasy value is
interesting.
great.
I think he's gonna be an interesting topic of conversation this whole offseason, just with the coaching change there now.
Mhm.
Who are they bringing in? What style of offense are they gonna be running? Is it gonna be better than what this Cliff Kingsbury offense was? I think
For
most people are gonna
him,
say, "Yeah, it's gonna be because their offense wasn't that great," but
right.
is it gonna be
Their
better for
quarterback didn't like.
him? Yeah.
I don't know. Kyler did not certainly seem to get along with the idea of the offense or with Cliff Kingsbury in general. So I'm cautiously optimistic,
Yeah, I
just
just
optimistic.
that's gonna be one of the more closely watched storylines for me this offseason,
Yeah.
especially since I invested in Kyler in redraft this last year, which it kind of worked out most weeks. I mean, he
Mhm.
finished in where did he finish, Kyler? He was, top 7 in points per game. So, I mean, that definitely worked out there. But him missing time, and then, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this offense changes since they were that more, 4 wide spread offense. Do they keep Hopkins? Like I said, one of the more interesting storylines I'm going to keep a close eye on this offseason.
Absolutely. And to that end, going into next season and starting this off season of dynasty trading, I'm going after these guys. So Kyler included. I still put him there, but I understand the questions.
Mhm.
But I'm going after your Jalen Hurts, your Patrick Mahomes, your Josh Allen. Like, I'm normally not that guy. I'm the guy who tries to outsmart everybody with quarterback. Now I'm going to wait and take these values here. I'm going to wait for the Kirk Cousins drop to happen. I'm going to wait for Trevor Lawrence to ascend. And like, to some extent, yes, that can work. But in Dynasty, especially, I'm so tired of the year-to-year rigmarole of the middle ground guys. And there's a plethora of them, as we talked about. I'm
Mhm.
going to try my best to put my eggs in the quarterback basket, especially in Dynasty. Like, I will go after Patrick Mahomes as hard as I can this offseason to see if I can get some of these more potentially flash-in-the-pan players coupled with, a decent enough package to go get them. Is that something that you're interested in, or are you still playing the kind of late round game with that?
I think in Dynasty, getting at least one stud quarterback is the way to go. And I know I have a team that Kirk Cousins is my starter and like nothing else behind there. Like I have like Nate Sudfeld as like my backup quarterback. Like I have nothing behind Cousins. I have Wentz, but again, he didn't start a lot of the season, so it's like I don't consider him an actual starting or an option. I'll hold on to him because yeah, he'll start at some point, but yeah. So yes, I agree with you. You need at least one stud quarterback on your dynasty roster in Superflex for sure.
Yeah,
Do you have to
pick
have a
that
second
stud.
one? No, because you don't have to start a quarterback in the Superflex position. You
Also
just
true.
don't. That is a myth that is perpetuated out there that you have to have two starting quarterbacks. Does it help? Yes, it does. Is it
And look,
necessary? No.
Joe Flacco is going to start 4 games next season anyways. You can just wait, pick him off of waivers a couple weeks before
Exactly.
that, slot him in for those 4 weeks, and then figure out the rest of it. So I'm with you on that.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I think, yeah, going after a stud quarterback, you're going to have to overpay. Like that's just no going in. You're going to have to overpay probably by a lot to get one of those top 5 quarterbacks because
Yeah.
they're young and they're really, really good.
Damn it. Why do the good football players have to be so expensive?
I know.
Don't like it.
So I'm one last question here, and then we'll move on and move off the QB, and we'll go do some more DFS talk and beer bet for next week, kind of finish up the show. But I want to name off a handful of quarterbacks here. Do you think there's any chance these quarterbacks could be fantasy relevant next year?
Hit me.
All right. Jimmy G.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the world. Yeah.
Derek Carr.
Yeah. Still, these are the 2 hot names on the quarterback market right now. It's all about landing spot for them.
I know we talked about Russ already, so we won't get back into that. How do you have any faith, assuming he comes back, Aaron Rodgers?
No.
0.
I didn't have faith this year. I will have less faith next year.
How about Sam Darnold?
No. Even when he was playing well, for fantasy sake, at least this year, I couldn't get myself to believe him for a week, let alone a season.
All right, 2 more. They're gross. Mac Jones.
No. Bill O'Brien is coming back to the Patriots. I don't care. I'm not in on Mac Jones.
All right, one last one. Kenny Pickett. Any interest there?
Kenny Pickett, I'm actually a little bit interested in. I do think there was flashes. I know people are upset because Matt Canada is going to stay there, and they wanted a big change, an overhaul on offense. I don't know that you need an overhaul. Steelers fans feel that way. I don't know that you do for fantasy, at least, because I think Pickett, with a full offseason here with these guys, they might still add some to the crew, some weapons. I think that he played just fine. I think that he's going to become a Kirk Cousins-esque type of fantasy asset.
All right. Well, that sounds good. All right. Any last thoughts here before we say goodbye to the quarterback recap here for this season? And I know we're going to be talking quarterbacks and stuff throughout the offseason here, but this is kind of our show where we're really just hyper focused on them.
I just want to wish Matt Ryan well in whatever his next career is or whatever his next endorsement line is. I hope you get all of the endorsements, Matt Ryan. I wish nothing but good things for you. And I'll be sad when I have to drop you off my dynasty team this offseason.
All right. Fair enough. So, should we do another underdog championship round?
I mean,
DFS.
what else are we going to do? What else are we going to do? We should. We
All
should.
right. Well, let me pull it up here. I've got it ready to go.
All right. Let's do this thing.
All right. We're good?
We're good. Of course, we're going to go for the 5 multiplier. Right?
Obviously.
Right. Okay.
So, do you want to focus on the 2 games or just focus on one?
I would like to start with the game that we have the most confidence in how the game script is going to go. For me, that is Cincinnati versus Kansas City.
All right.
I feel like that's right. We have a little bit more info, maybe more assurances on that.
All right. So we've got Joe Burrow. We've got half an interception, 276 passing yards, 276 and a half. Any interest in those?
Yeah, I'm pulling up Joe Burrow right now, actually, for all of their games against the Chiefs, because that's the big thing is what he's done against the Chiefs. And Patrick Mahomes, a little bit hobbled. So I think that brings down some of those opposing lines. But I think that then Joe Burrow won't necessarily have to do as much. So that's why I like going after this game. He's averaged in the last 2 games against the Chiefs, he's averaged 366 yards.
Whew.
It doesn't mean that he's going to do that now, again, especially
Obviously.
if Patrick Mahomes can't put up as much. But Patrick Mahomes on one leg still looked pretty damn good and still had Trevor Lawrence and the Jags having to continue through. So I do think that that's a good higher line to take.
All right. I like that. I agree. Joe Mixon, any interest in Joe?
I just never have any interest in Joe Mixon. It's not even the personal stuff anymore. It's just like he is so volatile. It's crazy. There's no rhyme or reason. Samaje Perine, on the other hand, I'm actually a little bit interested in. 16 and a half rushing yards for Samaje. That's if we think that the Bengals will take a little bit of a lead here, a little bit of comfort, maybe towards the end. I could see them using Samaje maybe on the last handful of drives. 16 and a half yards does not seem that outrageous for him to get. He got 33 yards this last game against Buffalo, for instance.
All right, let's hit the higher. We can always change it if we find something a little bit more juicy we like.
I like it. Like a guy named Jamar Chase or a guy named T. Higgins, that kind of deal.
This 85 and a half receiving yards, I like that line. Let's see what else we got here. Trenton Irwin, 8.5 receiving yards. Ooh.
You know, I love nothing more than to take these gross low numbers. But even for me, I can't quite do that.
Yeah. So then, okay, we got Patrick Mahomes, 273 and a half passing yards.
Mahomes on one leg again.
I know.
What can they do outside of him? Do we think Isaiah Pacheco and Ronald Jones and Jerick McKinnon are good enough to carry the workload where they will ease off of Patrick Mahomes? Yeah, I don't think so either. He has averaged in his last 3 games against the Bengals, by the way, he's averaged 280 passing yards, just barely on the higher end of that thing. They really have had his number. This is a very smart line from them. I'm not interested in it either way, if I'm honest.
Okay. I don't know if I want to hit any of these running backs in this game. I am not confident in any of it.
What's Jerick McKinnon's total rushing and receiving? Because that's the one I might
57 and a half.
Oh, that's a frustrating line. But it does feel like if Mahomes is going to have to be doing a lot of dump offs or rely on that kind of thing, he's interesting. What do we think? I know you scrolled past this, but what do you think about the half interception for Mahomes in this circumstance? I'm leaning more and more towards trying that. Again, he's hobbled. since he's really had his number.
Yeah, I don't like that though. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's no, I'm not, unless there's not anything else that we really see here. I don't want to take on that one.
Fair enough. And
All
you have
right, what
his
a-
receivers.
Yeah. So we've got Juju with 45.5, MVS with 28.5, Kadarius 34.5, Kelsey with 78.5. I feel like that's a really low line for Kelsey.
I feel like his line hovers pretty close to 80 yards in perpetuity. Like they're never going to give him too much of a discount.
I want to hit the higher on that. I'm sorry. I just feel confident
Go for it.
that we'll hit that one.
Hey, you go for it, man. I was interested a little bit in Kadarius Toney for the same reasons as Jerick McKinnon, honestly. As just like, I need somebody borderline gadgety because I'm hobbled here to just get some yak. And it feels like Kadarius Toney would do that. That's not a bad
right.
line. He got 36
No.
yards last week.
Yeah, let's hit that one. I like that. Any interest in a kicker? You think it's going to be a field goal
Not in
type of
this
game?
Not in this game. I'm a little too timid about it for this because I don't know how that's going to shake out. Do you want to go to Jamar Chase and do you want to really level into something there? Take that 85.5.
I will be honest. I will take the higher on it if we're going to pick one. I'm going to
Interesting.
take it just because it's my money we're playing with here. So
That's fair. That's fair. Is it intriguing to you at all that he has only hit that once in the last 5 games? Does that matter to you?
no,
Okay.
because I mean, he can go off at any time, and I think
That's true.
And I don't know. I'm just doing it.
That's fair. That's fair.
We're
We're comfortable with everything, locked in. We're good
We're
to
locking
go.
it in.
All right, let's do this. We're really into this game. I'm going to be paying so much attention to this,
Mm-hmm.
even more than usual. I love it.
All right. So, Jake, that only leaves one thing left on the docket for this week, and that is our beer bet of the week. And it is your turn to offer up said bet. So, what do you got for me?
So obviously we don't have a lot to work with now. We have the 2 games, but they're good enough games. And I'm going to take us away from our DFS mode. We're going to
Fair
work
enough.
on the San Francisco and Philly game.
All right.
And we are going to work receiving core versus receiving core. Let's repeat last week. Let's run it back, but give you the option. Do you want Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown? Do you want Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and company? What do you
No
want?
tight ends, just wide receivers, right?
Just wide receiver. You know what might be more interesting is just tight end versus tight end. George Kittle versus Dallas Goedert. But I kind of want to run it back like last week. I want to do receiving core.
All right. Ooh, this is a good one. I actually really like this. This is
Oh,
not.
thank you. It's tough. Let me add this caveat because I think it's important. Total yards for the receiving core. Total yards for the receiving core. This opens up a little bit of the rushing trickery for, let's say, a Deebo Samuel type, because I do think that that's important to balance it out.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to say total yards, not fantasy points.
Correct. Total
So
yards.
just total yards.
That's
receiving, rushing, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I'm probably overcomplicating it. Fantasy Points literally does that same thing. I don't think I need to reinvent the wheel. That's a good call out. Let's just do Fantasy Points.
Okay.
It's a big one. Because there's really, beyond the depth chart of the initial 2 guys,
Mm-hmm.
you've got the comparable, just like big play potential on either side. Juwan Jennings or Quez Watkins. I don't know. It's the same fucking guy.
I'm going to take the Philadelphia wide receiver room.
Dustin taking Philly. Right on. Right on. I like this one a lot. So I'm glad.
This is a good one. No, this is good. I mean, it could really go either way. Honestly, at the end of the day, I just feel like Philadelphia's a little bit better team. They don't have the rookie quarterback going into such a big game. which I think ultimately is the needle mover for me. And not that Jalen Hurts has been in, NFC Championship game, but he's got more experience. He's been in big games as a college player before. I really just like what Philadelphia is doing this year. Like they're just humming. They've been humming along at a 10 the entire season. Even when Hurts was out, like they didn't miss. Yeah, they lost a couple games, but it's not like they were missing a big beat there. So
Right.
I
thought your
yeah.
needle mover would be Christian McCaffrey not being included in the receiving group and him potentially being the Travis Kelce of this game and taking away from San Francisco. But that just stacks on to your point
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
why you took Philly. So, God
Yeah.
damn it. I'm rooting so hard for Brock Purdy. Really, what I'm rooting for is a massacre in the first half where the Eagles just dominate and Brock has to keep throwing all of the second half. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, that very well could happen. So
Good.
we will see come Sunday. So that'll do it for this week. Any last words, Jake, here before we sign off?
Enjoy football. It is not here for long.
That's right. That's right. We are almost in the dead zone of football until free agency starts in mid-March. So yeah, it'll be the humdrums, the deep winter of the NFL offseason. It's coming. Enjoy it.
But
while
we're
you
going to
can.
have some pretty kick-ass episodes for that dead time, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. And we're probably gonna have
So-
some really good guests joining us to,
Yeah.
to tease a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna have some good content. Don't worry about that. As always, folks, go out, give us a rate and review wherever you review your podcast. It helps everyone find us, especially in this off season. You're looking for more things to do now that you don't have football to focus on. Focus on some football content with DTFF. Rate and review us, helps others find us easier. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get to see us live every week. Interact with us in the chat, which is always a lot of fun. We'll answer your questions if you have them. That's what we're here to do, especially now in the off season where, things are a little bit looser. It's more evergreen content and not so much like specific in the weeds as far as week to week decisions. If you have more long range dynasty questions or upcoming redraft questions, that's what we're here for. And I think that'll do it. Do you feel good about this, Jake?
I feel great about this.
Oh, you feel great. I love it. All right. Well, until next time, folks, peace, love, humptiness forever.
Cheers, FFers.